Football usually remembers its greatest players through what they leave behind: a tactical idea, a position redefined, a generation inspired to play the game differently. The very best become impossible to erase because their influence survives long after their careers end. Their football evolves into something bigger than the individual, shaping the sport for years to come. But hidden within football's history is a different kind of story. The story of a player whose brilliance was so extraordinary that it felt destined to define an era, only for his own body to slowly erase the version of him that made such a future possible. Not overnight, not through a single injury, but through a series of setbacks that gradually took away the acceleration, freedom, and effortless elegance that once made him almost impossible to defend. The trophies remained, the Ballon d'Or remained, the memories remained. Yet, the football itself seemed to disappear. That player was Kaká. Because this isn't the story of a superstar who declined. It's the story of a superstar whose greatest version existed for such a brief moment that football is still wondering what might have happened if his body had allowed that story to continue. Long before Kaká became the face of European football, his career came frighteningly close to ending before it had truly begun. As a teenager, while spending time with his family, he suffered a swimming pool accident that fractured a vertebra in his spine. Doctors feared the injury could have permanent consequences, not just for his football career, but for his ability to live without lasting complications. At an age when most young players dream about the future, Kaká was forced to confront the possibility that there might not be one. It is one of football's strangest ironies that the player later remembered for injuries almost disappeared before the world had even seen his talent. He recovered, and when he returned to São Paulo, there was little about him that suggested he would soon become the best player in the world. He wasn't the loudest personality. He didn't arrive carrying the mythology often attached to Brazilian prodigies. His game relied on something quieter but equally devastating. Long, elegant strides that seemed to glide across the pitch, perfectly timed bursts through midfield, decisions made at full speed without sacrificing precision. While many attackers defeated opponents through tricks or unpredictability, Kaká defeated them by making the impossible appear effortless. Every carry of the ball looked simple, until defenders realized they had already been left behind. That combination made him unusually difficult to categorize. He wasn't a traditional number 10 waiting between the lines. He wasn't a winger hugging the touchline. He wasn't a striker living inside the penalty area. Kaká occupied the spaces between those identities, collecting possession deep before accelerating through the heart of the pitch with a directness that felt almost impossible to interrupt. He didn't slowly dismantle defensive structures. He ran straight through them. And because he did it with elegance rather than violence, people often underestimated just how physically demanding his style truly was. By the time Europe began to notice him, Kaká looked less like the next great Brazilian playmaker and more like the beginning of something football hadn't fully understood yet. A player capable of combining the imagination of a classic creator with the speed of a modern transition weapon. It felt like the future had arrived earlier than expected. The tragedy is that football would only get to experience that future for a little while. When Kaká arrived at AC Milan, European football was entering a period of tactical discipline. Defensive structures had become more organized, transitions were more carefully managed, and the space between midfield and defense was disappearing. The traditional number 10 was slowly losing influence because teams no longer allowed one player the freedom to drift untouched between the lines. Many gifted playmakers struggled to adapt. Football was becoming faster, more compact, and less forgiving. Kaká responded by refusing to play like a traditional playmaker at all. Instead of waiting for space to appear, he capable purpose. Defenders were no longer asked to stop a passer. They were asked to stop a runner who could think like a creator at full speed. Every long stride increased the pressure on the defensive line. Step forward too early and he would glide past, drop too deep and he would release the final pass. Delay the decision for even a second and he was already driving toward goal. Kaká didn't just exploit transitions, he became the transition. That was what made him feel so different from everyone else. Most attacking midfielders controlled football through patience. Kaká controlled it through momentum. His first touch wasn't designed to slow the game down. It was designed to move it forward before opponents had reorganized themselves. Every carry forced defenders into impossible choices because they weren't reacting to a player occupying space. They were reacting to a player rapidly changing its value. He didn't wait for the perfect opening. He created one simply by refusing to stop running. By 2007, that approach had transformed Kaká from an outstanding midfielder into the most feared attacking player in Europe. Defenders knew exactly what he wanted to do. Coaches prepared for it. Entire backlines adjusted their positioning because of it. None of it seemed to matter. And against Manchester United, on one unforgettable night, football witnessed the complete version of Kaká before injuries slowly began taking pieces of him away. The 2007 Champions League semi-final between AC Milan and Manchester United is often remembered for the goals Kaká scored. But the goals are only the conclusion. The real story begins much earlier, in the moments when Milan regained possession. Every time the ball reached Kaká, the entire defensive structure of Manchester United seemed to change. Midfielders immediately retreated. Defenders hesitated between stepping forward and protecting the space behind them. For a brief second, one of Europe's quickest and most organized teams looked uncertain. Not because they didn't know what Kaká wanted to do, but because they couldn't decide when he was going to do it. That uncertainty was his greatest weapon. Kaká didn't overwhelm opponents with endless tricks or intricate combinations. He overwhelmed them with acceleration that arrived at exactly the wrong moment for the defender. He carried the ball in long, controlled strides that looked almost effortless, yet each touch increased the speed of the attack without sacrificing control. Defenders found themselves running backwards while trying to read a player who was already thinking one action ahead. The faster they reacted, the more exposed they became. And the more cautious they became, the more ground Kaká covered before anyone could challenge him. His second goal perfectly captured why he was so terrifying. It wasn't simply a demonstration of technical quality. It was evidence of a player whose body and mind were operating in complete harmony. As defenders converged, Kaká's first touch invited pressure instead of avoiding it. His next movement split that pressure apart, turning two defenders into obstacles for each other rather than for him. In only a few seconds, what should have been one of the safest defensive situations became an open path toward goal. It looked spontaneous, but it was built on years of understanding exactly how defenders behave when confronted by speed they cannot comfortably predict. That night represented more than the peak of an extraordinary player. It represented a version of football that seemed almost limitless. Kaká could carry attacks over 40 meters without losing balance, without losing vision, and without losing precision. He wasn't just outrunning opponents, he was outrunning the tactical structures designed to stop players like him. Watching him against Manchester United felt like watching the future of football unfold in real time. The painful irony is that the qualities which made him unstoppable were also the ones his body would struggle to preserve. The tragedy of Kaká's career was never that he suddenly became an ordinary footballer. It was that the qualities separating him from everyone else were also the most physically demanding to sustain. His game depended on explosive acceleration through the center of the pitch, long carries at full speed, and the ability to change direction without losing balance. Every burst placed enormous stress on his knees, hips, and muscles. As injuries began to accumulate, they didn't merely keep him off the pitch. They slowly removed the very actions that had made him extraordinary. His move to entity sports team, Real Madrid CF, Real Madrid CFR era. Instead, it became the point where football watched his body begin negotiating with his talent. Groin problems, recurring knee issues, and long spells of rehabilitation interrupted any sense of continuity. Whenever Kaká returned, there were flashes of the old brilliance. A powerful run, an elegant finish, a perfectly timed through ball. But those moments became increasingly difficult to sustain. His football intelligence had never disappeared. His body simply stopped allowing him to express it as often as before. That is what made his decline so difficult to understand. Supporters often judged the player they were seeing against the memories of 2007, expecting the same devastating transitions and effortless accelerations. But Kaká's greatest strength had never been a skill that could survive independently of his physique. Unlike a deep-lying playmaker who could adapt by relying more heavily on positioning or passing, Kaká's identity was built upon movement. As injuries gradually reduced that movement, they also reduced the version of Kaká that frightened defenders before he had even touched the ball. Yet his career remained remarkable. A Ballon d'Or winner, a FIFA World Cup champion with Brazil, a UEFA Champions League winner, league titles in Italy and Spain, individual awards that confirmed he had reached the summit of world football. But those achievements tell only part of the story. When defenders speak about Kaká, they rarely begin with medals. They remember the feeling of seeing him accelerate into open space, knowing exactly what was about to happen, and still being unable to stop it. That version of Kaká did not fade because football solved him. It faded because his body could no longer keep pace with the brilliance his mind still imagined. By the time Kaká's career began drawing to a close, football had already moved into a new era. Pressing became more coordinated. Defensive blocks became more compact. Midfielders were expected to contribute in every phase of play. Yet amid all of those tactical changes, something quietly disappeared with him. The game lost one of its purest transition artists, a player who could transform a defensive recovery into a goal-scoring opportunity through nothing more than his own movement. Not by dribbling through 5 defenders, not through elaborate combinations, but by carrying the ball with a speed and elegance that seemed impossible to interrupt. That is why Kaká's legacy feels different from many other legends. Most great players leave behind a style that others can imitate. Coaches build systems around their ideas. Young footballers study their movements and reproduce them. Kaká's football proved far more difficult to inherit because it depended on a rare harmony between intelligence, technique, and extraordinary physical freedom. Remove even one of those qualities and the illusion disappeared. His greatness wasn't built on a single skill. It existed in the perfect balance of all of them. In many ways, his career also became a reminder of football's greatest vulnerability. The sport often celebrates tactics, systems, and philosophies, as though they alone shape history. But sometimes history changes for a far simpler reason. A body no longer responds the way it once did. An explosive first step becomes half a second slower. A run that once felt effortless begins carrying hesitation. Entire careers can pivot on changes so subtle that supporters barely notice them, until the player they remember has quietly become someone else. Kaká didn't lose his understanding of football. He gradually lost the physical language through which he expressed it. So when people remember Kaká, they often remember the smile, the Ballon d'Or, or those unforgettable runs through the heart of Europe's best defenses. But perhaps his greatest legacy is the question he leaves behind. How much more of football was still waiting to discover him? Because injuries didn't erase Ricardo Kaká from history. They erased the future that history was expecting him to write.